Good evening. Before we begin, I would like to wish a happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans. We as a nation greatly appreciate your service and your sacrifice. Welcome. This is the last in an 8-part series of community discussions of racial justice and law enforcement, organized by the College Community Partnership for Racial Justice and presented online by the Levitt Center for Public Affairs at Hamilton College and broadcast live by WPNY. The partnership includes 6 colleges in Oneida and Herkimer Counties, as well as the Community Foundation, the United Way, the Frontiers Club, the Latino Association, and Save Our Streets. Our goal is to develop a dialogue on racial equity and criminal justice, and also to support law enforcement reform efforts by local governments. I'm Musco Millner from Utica College, and I'll serve as your moderator for tonight's discussion. I'm accompanied by former police chief Frank Fowler from Syracuse, who will assist me with the presentation of questions to the presenters or the responders. We will begin with presentations that will take us up to about 7:30 p.m. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom screen to submit questions. If you'd like to join us online so that you can participate in the conversation, please go to communityforjustice.org. That's community, the number 4, justice.org. After the presentations and responses, Chief Fowler and I will pose questions to the panel. The broadcast will end at 8 p.m. However, the webinar will continue for about a half an hour following that. I'm happy to say that around 7:55 p.m., we will turn to Doc Michael Woods for a musical segment. Doc Woods, who is a professor of music at Hamilton College, is a celebrated composer and performer. Open, serious discussions like this will lead to change that lasts because we are part of it. Tell your friends and family it's time to put some skin in the game. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Another way to be part of change is to take the survey on racial equity and criminal justice by texting MV Justice to 898-211. That's MV Justice to 898-211. The topic of tonight's discussion is what the public needs to know and should know about police reform efforts and how you believe your agencies can strive towards strong and responsive law enforcement accountability. I'll ask each panelist to give us a wave when I introduce them. Our first responder or presenter tonight is Chief Kevin Beach. Chief Beach has been the chief of Rome Police since 2008, serving in various assignments within the police department, joining the agency in 1994. Our second responder or presenter will be Utica Police Chief Mark Williams. Chief Williams has been the chief of the Utica Police Department since 2010, serving in various assignments with the police department since joining the agency in 1988. Last, but certainly not least, our third responder or presenter will be the Oneida County Sheriff, Robert Maciol. Sheriff Maciol has been serving as the Sheriff of Oneida County since 2011, following assignments with the New York Mills Police Department and Whitesboro Police Department, where he served as the police officer for approximately 21 years. Chief Beach, you have the floor and the screen.
Am I unmuted now? All right, thank you, sir. Thank everybody for allowing me to be part of such an important event. When I was asked to speak about this and talk about police reform and what our goals are as a police department, since getting the governor's executive order, I was thinking about it, and one of the first things that I think that everybody should know is I think in general as a police community that we are not against or opposed to reform. Actually, we embrace it. When it comes to the administrators of police departments, we spend a significant amount of our time seeking different ways to make policing better. And I'm proud of the Rome Police Department. I would say in our efforts over the years, I think that we're considered a very progressive police department. But that doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement. Since the governor's order, we started looking at our department basically from top to bottom. Some of the things that we realized is the suggestions that were made in the governor's guide. We have been practicing for several years. There's a lot that we're not, but there's a lot that we've been practicing. For example, when it comes to the community relations, probably 7 or 8 years ago, we had an intern with the Rome Police Department named Peter Marr, who was actually from Hamilton College. Peter spent a couple of years here with the police department, kind of following the officers, studying what we do as a department, doing ride-alongs, speaking with people in the business community, residents of the community, going door to door, speaking with people. And he was putting a project together basically for his thesis. He was actually supposed to be here for about 6 months. And like I said, he spent about 2 years here. What he ended up proposing was that we deploy a team of officers to deal with quality of life issues in our neighborhoods, doing some more walking beats, visiting with businesses, attending community meetings. And we created a unit that we referred to as a community impact unit. And the response was overwhelmingly positive, and that unit continues today. So just an example of bringing somebody in from the outside, allowing them, into our lives, into our business, and taking some advice from them. Around that time, we created the Office of Professional Standards in our department. What that does is that investigates, reviews, documents all of our complaints of any type of police misconduct. That's resulted in a lot more accountability and a transparent process for our citizens to voice any of the concerns that they may have. And since the inception of the OPS, we've seen about a 65% decrease in our complaints of police misconduct. And that's also something that we are very transparent about. It's out in our annual report that's outlined in the report, and it's available to the public. I also formed a community advisory committee back then, and it consisted of members of business, religious groups, members representing the homeless community and different neighborhood groups. We'd meet monthly, and we established a lot of public events to increase the trust and the involvement our officers have in the community. And I think that's very important, and that goes in line with the reform and reinvention. I think, again, it is the community involvement. A lot of the involvement that we had was we created a law enforcement day several years ago. We have officers from a lot of different agencies that would come and display their equipment, their personnel. We would have games for the kids, live bands, do demonstrations of our K9 units, our SWAT teams, and bring the people in so that they're part of this event, all-day event, free to the public, and we really get a very good response from that. We've hosted charity basketball games with the police department, fire department, school district, and that raises money for a Shop with a Cop program. Again, trying to always be involved with our community and being open and responsive to their needs. We volunteer at our Rome Rescue Mission, serve meals with them. We raised last couple of years over just about $20,000 now for a No Shave November. And as everybody could see, I haven't shaved in a while, and that is against our policy and procedure, except for during November when we're raising money for the homeless shelter. Our guys host gaming nights. They play videos with the guys, movie nights, fundraisers. And we encourage our officers to get out there, coach, referee youth sports, and just really be a part of the community. That is something that we really strongly believe in here. Volunteering our time. Even during our promotional interviews, one of our questions that we ask is what organizations or events have you volunteered to participate in the last 3 years? So again, that's very near and dear to my heart, is our community involvement. So after receiving the governor's executive order, I reached out to several individuals and organizations requesting their participation in a committee to look at policing in general and really focus on the Rome Police Department. We formed our committee in June. We held our first meeting on August the 10th, and we've had 5 meetings so far, the latest being this past Monday. Our committee consists of 13 members. It is, again, I'll apologize for this, as my light is on I apologize for that. Anyway, the group is very diverse. We have 13 members in the group, members of several different faith communities, members from the public, business leaders, and again, representing our homeless community. I've provided the group with our policy and procedure manual, and we've begun an exhaustive review of our policies and procedures. And there have been some updates that have been made, and we're looking for anything that may need improvement. If we see anything that is identified that we can make better. Our goal here is first to review and discuss all of our policies and procedures. We want to discuss our past, our present, and our future trainings, including any racial diversity training, which we just implemented a new round of racial diversity training, which was conducted by one of the members of our committee. We would like to solicit ideas for increased training for our officers. Also community involvement opportunities, minority recruitment, and different policing strategies. We're going to be meeting with our Common Council. They also have a diversity committee to discuss our ideas and our plans to move forward. And then we'll encourage members of the community to comment on our findings and make suggestions prior to us creating a written plan that needs to be submitted to the state. So we believe that, that through this process, the public will have a better understanding of our department, and we will also have a better understanding of what our community expects and more importantly deserves from us. It's a very large undertaking for all involved, especially now with the COVID restrictions. It's very tough to meet. It's tough to get everybody together, so it is going slower than we would like. But I believe that with the cooperation from the public and open and honest dialogue, I think that we can improve our relations, and I look forward to a brighter future. And with that, I turn it over to Chief Mark Williams.
Good evening. Good evening. First of all, good evening, and I want to thank the Hamilton College for inviting myself to this racial justice and criminal justice reform effort. You know, when the governor's executive order came out right after the death of George Floyd, and having read that over, it became pretty apparent that within his executive order is that there are certain police departments like ourselves. I thought we were in a better position than others based on the fact that we're one of the few police departments that have state accreditation when it comes to our policies and procedures. For example, within New York State, there's over 530 police departments, and out of that, only 24% of those police departments actually have state accreditation. So that puts us in a good position. Also, read over the executive orders, they talked about deployment strategies. And a lot of the deployment strategies that we currently use are the same ones that are recommended in the Governor's GIVE program, which is the Gun Involved Violence Elimination program. And within it, there's such things about hotspot policing, focused deterrence, street outreach, but also they want the participant agencies to integrate procedural justice in what they do. So we started our police reform committee efforts on July 23rd. Since that time, we've had a total of 7 meetings. And like all police departments, we're trying to strive for trust and legitimacy throughout our community. And the only way to do that is going to be through transparency and working with our community. Having said that, what we're finding, having done 7 meetings with our committee members, is that they really don't know a lot about your police department. So a lot of the time during the committee meetings are actually spent educating them about our policies, our procedures, our practices, some of the community outreach and community programs we're involved in. And through that, what we find is you can't offer constructive police reform recommendations if you don't know about your local police department. So one, we have to do a better job explaining what we do to the public. And at the second time, it's important that, through the collaborative approach that we come up with solutions that work best for our community. A big part of, like I spoke about earlier about transparency, is what we've done as a department in the past recent years. We were one of the first police departments in Oneida County that had started the body worn camera program for all our street line police officers in 2015. And that was important because you talk about transparency, when you used to get complaints against the officers, and when you went to investigate these matters, it usually be the officer's word against that of the citizens. With the body worn camera, now we have a viewpoint of what actually transpired. Instead of having unsubstantiated complaints, either the officer is exonerated or he's found that the complaint is sustained and possible discipline as well. So body worn cameras has been a big game changer when it comes to policing. Also, we talk about transparency. We're one of the, I think we're the only police department in New York State, and the first ones to do it, that instead of people asking or foiling our employees' personnel files, we're posting them on our own, on our department website for people to view. On top of that, we have a very robust personnel complaint system. We accept third-party complaints. We accept anonymous complaints, and they're fully investigated. We have many different avenues where a person can make a complaint rather than the fear of going to a police department and making that complaint. They could do it online. They could do it to the mayor's office. They could call directly my professional standards office, or send a letter. But there's many ways to file a complaint with the Utica Police Department. Additionally, we thoroughly investigate and review all use of force incidents. And one of the things that we started doing about a couple of years ago is that we bought a software that actually we use as an early warning system, so that if we see an officer that's using use of force at a rate that's higher than average, or you see most officers using, that's our opportunity to bring that officer in and to find out what's the situation. Is it a personal problem? Is it a training issue? Is it a policy consideration? But we've been using our early warning system for now a couple of years, and it's been a helpful tool. And when it comes to disciplining officers, appropriate discipline is dispensed to the point where we don't wait for the news media to actually inquire about discipline. We've been pretty transparent about it. We put out press releases on any major discipline, and we put that out to the public. And I think another big part about transparency, you got to have a good working relationship with your local news media as well. I don't like to have them foil anything that they're going to get anyway. And more importantly, I think it's important that you work, and we both realize we both have a job to do. Another thing I was very happy to see with our police academy back in 2016, we were one of the first police academies without it being mandated. We had implicit bias training and procedural justice training, mandated not only in the police academy, but also for, in-service training for all our police officers. And that continues to be an ongoing training that we do yearly. So having said that, again, I want to thank you for being, having us be a part of this, and I'll turn it over to Sheriff Robert Maciol.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and certainly an honor for me to be here. Sorry for the glitch in the beginning there. I'm not an IT guy, so that's certainly not my specialty. But certainly, like I said, it's an honor to be here. I think when the governor's order first came out, we hear the word reform. Many of us, just kind of wonder what that means exactly. And the one thing I've always strived for since I've been the sheriff for about 10 years is to have a positive relationship with our community. And I think that's important, an open and honest and transparent relationship. At the sheriff's office, we're a little bit different. We obviously have patrol responsibilities in the areas of Oneida County that don't primarily have their own police agency. And then we provide assistance to the agencies that do exist when they request it. We also have a whole nother side of the agency, being the correctional facility, which certainly has many challenges on that side also. But I think it's important, like I said, when we first got this order from the governor, I'm looking, and I said this just the other day in an interview, for the past 30 or 31 years that I've been a police officer, no matter whether I'm working or not, I'm always thinking of things as a police officer. So I'm pretty excited and eager to hear what people have to say. Certainly, and we've been taking a lot of feedback, but not only people on in this meeting here tonight, but certainly the committee that the county executive has appointed, our police reform committee, because I'm curious to see what people have to say and their thoughts and ideas coming from a non-police outlook. Because again, like I said, every time I look at something, I'm looking at it through the eyes of someone who's been a cop for quite some time. Here at the sheriff's office, again, as the other agencies that previously spoke, I mean, we are an accredited agency. We are the 3 accredited agencies in Oneida County, and we certainly wish that the rest could be. Certainly New York State accreditation, those are the highest standards set forth by the Division of Criminal Justice Services, which their director is appointed by the governor. So again, the policies that they set forth that we follow certainly are at this point the highest standards set forth by the state. And I am honored back in 2016, the governor appointed me to represent sheriffs on the New York State Accreditation Council. So we meet we haven't met in Albany since COVID set, but pre-COVID, there's a large group of us that meet regularly in Albany, and we review new agencies that want to become accredited. We also approve the annual audits of agencies that currently are accredited. And then every 5 years, each agency has to go through a very strict and specific audit to get their reaccreditation, and then we approve that. So certainly, as I sit on the Accreditation Council, I'm looking at not only sheriff's offices, but we're looking at city police departments, town and village police departments. So again, I'm proud that we are accredited. My predecessor, Sheriff Middaugh, has first got the law enforcement division accredited, and then we've carried on that tradition since then. And again, getting accreditation is certainly an achievement, and keeping it is actually more challenging than initially getting it. Training is extremely important. We too, we co-sponsor the Mohawk Valley Police Academy with the Utica Police Department, and certainly, the chief just mentioned some of the things that have been happening at the police academy that we are very proud of. In addition, we do regular in-service training here at the sheriff's office with all of our members. on diversity. And most recently, we've had 2 familiar instructors working with members of the Sheriff's Office, Dr. Mark Montgomery and Patrick Johnson. They've been assisting us previously with diversity training. We also are one of the 2 agencies in the county, us and Utica, that have body cameras. That is probably one of the single most expensive ventures that we've gone down. The equipment itself is not that expensive. The storage is expensive. But with that, it is probably one of the most valuable and most important tools that I've purchased in my time here since being the sheriff. As Chief Williams spoke, the cameras are extremely helpful to us when an issue is brought forth, or if we have a concern. We're definitely very happy to have body cameras. Not only do we have them in our patrol division, but we've also recently expanded into our corrections division. So nearly all of our correction officers and supervisory staff and working inside the jail, they too have body cameras. So again, when there's an incident, we're able to capture the incident in its entirety, and certainly not only helps us with any concerns that may come up regarding policy and procedure issues, but also they're very useful tools, in a lot of other ways. Like I said in the beginning here, we don't primarily patrol the 2 cities. Obviously, we focus on a lot of the rural parts of the county. So, our challenge here is we are dealing with all types of diverse populations throughout the county. We could easily find ourselves assisting one of the city police departments with something, and then moments later we could find ourselves, on a farm or dealing with a rural issue. So certainly, we deal with a lot of different issues out in the community, which, like I said, requires us to really focus on diversity training in our agency. Several years ago, I started a community affairs unit. We have a fully staffed community affairs unit, and their main mission is basically to be out in the community and explain to the community who the sheriff's office is and all the things that the sheriff's office provides to the community. Because again, we want to make sure that people know who we are and know that we are a good resource for many different things. And again, community affairs, that's one of their main goals. Recruitment is also a top priority for our community affairs unit. They are out in the community as much as they can be, promoting our agency and promoting the different positions that we're offering for hire. Obviously, our goal is to have a very diverse workforce. And one of the areas where we lack significantly is diversity. Like every other police department nearly across this country, we lack in diversity. Nearly all of our patrol division is primarily white male. Obviously, we have several females, and we do have others who do make our workforce somewhat diverse. But again, that's an area where we lack a lot in. Like I said, nearly all police agencies do. So again, we need to do a much better job when it comes to diversifying our workforce. Our workforce inside the correctional facility is actually very diverse. We're above most national standards. And again, we try our best to get out to every public event. It's a little bit difficult now with COVID, but we're in the schools, we're in the colleges, promoting people to join our agency. And like I said, with the goal of having a diverse workforce. Relationship with the community, another thing that we try to work really hard at. As Chief Williams mentioned and Chief Beach, we have good open relationships with our media. The Sheriff's Office, we also have a pretty strong social media platform, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We also have our own Sheriff's app. If anyone wants to check that out, just go to the App Store. It's a free app. Just punch in Oneida County Sheriff's Office. And that app will show you exactly who we are and what we do. And you can pretty much do everything on that app. It'll link it to our website, which is relatively new. So again, having a positive relationship and an open line of communications with our community is extremely important to us. In the jail, we do a lot of work in the correctional facility, and certainly I know we're talking about law enforcement reform here, But in our case, a lot happens in the jail that we're very proud of. We have one of the top equivalency programs, high school equivalency programs in the state. Obviously, anyone that comes into our facility under the age of 21 that does not have a high school diploma, we offer them the ability to do so. We certainly strongly encourage those inmates to join the classroom if they want to get their high school equivalency. And then if there are open seats available, which most of the time there are, we can open that pool up to anyone in our facility, no matter what their age is, to get their high school diploma. We also have a pretty strong second chance program where we work to try to find jobs for people when they are re-entering the community. We want them to re-enter our community on a positive note. So we want to be able to, if we're able to find them a job, we do that. I've done several references for inmates. Some of our inmates that are with us a little bit longer, and they do become part of our training programs. We have different training programs, again, pre-COVID, because it's kind of shut us down on a lot of things. But we're able to go out into the community and do work for either nonprofits or public building, public owned properties. We have horticultural programs where we'll go into, let's say, a park, plant flowers, things like that. So we can actually teach the inmates a trade. So when they leave here, we can find them a job in that area, in the landscaping area. The one story I've shared, it's been a few years, but the individual, when I do see them or do see him, he reminds me of this, but we had an inmate who was in our worker program who actually was very good and enjoyed detailing cars. And we have about 100 vehicles in the sheriff's fleet. And because this inmate was so happy, enjoyed doing that, we let him work a lot next door, with our vehicles when we were able to. And we're able to get that person a job at a local car dealership. Certainly not the job of, the career of the century. But again, it was a solid job for this person to re-enter in the community, to get some income going and to get their life back on track. So, and that's one of our many success stories. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're doing our best to assist these people when they do re-enter into the community, because our goal, and I say it all the time, is to, I would love nothing more than to put myself out of business when it comes to the correctional facility, when people re-enter the community on a positive note and get their life back on track. And I guess I certainly don't want to take up too much time because I can go on and on, but again, none of us are perfect. There's always room for improvement. We stand ready to hear from the community as we always have, and look forward to working with our committee here at the county level, as our meetings begin, and certainly look forward to the feedback that we get from this group. And, in the end, our goal here is to provide a better service to the people of our community. And we want them to have trust and faith in their law enforcement. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to the questions here ahead.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thanks to Chief Beach, Chief Williams as well. At this time, we'll enter the question and answer portion of our segment. And with the first question, that will be presented by Chief Frank Fowler.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the difficult and challenging job that each of you do. This is a question that comes from one of our audience members that's viewing here today. In Buffalo, many officers protested when one of their fellow officers had pushed an elderly gentleman to the ground. In general, is it important for officers to condemn fellow officers' misconduct, and how should that happen? How does each of your leadership style influence condemnation of officers' misconduct?
Frank, it's Chief
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Just to answer that question, when the George Floyd incident happened, we were one of the first police departments that came out in opposition of what happened. Normally, when you see, acts of potential police misconduct or officer-involved shootings. You don't see a lot of police agencies, coming out either in support of or in opposition to what had happened. We very quickly condemned the actions publicly about George Floyd. And I think that went a long way in helping not seeing the unrest we saw here in the city of Utica. And the second part of that question was?
Just a second. The second part of the question is in reference to your leadership style. How does your leadership style influence the condemnation of officers' misconduct?
The way I look at it is, you're in a leadership role. What you present to your membership is going to have to be an example for other officers to follow. So, if you live by your policies, you uphold your policies, you show leadership qualities, hopefully those same traits will be carried on by your personnel.
Okay, someone else want to tackle the question?
Yep. Thank you, Chief. And it's nice to see you again. I always look forward to seeing you out in the community. Haven't been out your way. Obviously, you're retired now, but I always happy to see you at various events. In regards to your question, I think I think it's critical for our employees to see their leadership. And again, I do my best. And again, like I said in the beginning, none of us are perfect, but I try to do my best to lead by example. And when an officer makes a mistake, depending on obviously if it's a mistake that is intentional or it's a mistake that carries consequences, then those consequences have to be carried out. But at the same time, when an officer does something that is positive, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. And again, we just can't do one or the other. I think it's important, like I said, when a police officer does make an error, and there are consequences, that those consequences be handed out fairly and firmly across the board. And like I said, when an officer does something good, they need to be acknowledged for it, because obviously there are many officers who have done some pretty amazing things and put their life on the line. And there are in this area, we know for firsthand, having lost a member of our agency in the line of duty. There are officers who, like I said, they have made the ultimate sacrifice in keeping their community safe. So with that being said, I guess what I'm trying to say is it has to be balanced. Certainly if someone messes up, the consequences need to be handed down. And then at the same time, when an officer does something good, they need to be acknowledged for that also.
Yeah, Chief Fowler, just to, I guess to echo what Sheriff and Chief are saying is, it is lead by example, and that's on and off duty. That's something that we preach about here, myself and the deputy, is we're very big on taking accountability and responsibility for your actions, whether you're on or off duty, especially in a small community like Rome. Everybody knows who you are, and you're a police officer 24/7. They know who you are when you're in the grocery store, when you're at the gas station, and we are expected to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and we expect that and we accept that. So I think, like the other two gentlemen are saying, is we need to make sure we hold ourselves accountable and we hold our people accountable, and we also do acknowledge the good things that they do.
Okay.
Keeping in the spirit of accountability, this question comes from one of the viewers. Transparency with the public seems to be very important. I'm wondering, how does the spirit of transparency transfer over within the department? How do you all facilitate or encourage transparency and honesty within the department regarding your police officers? And we'll start with Chief Beach, since you went third.
Can you give me a little bit more on that? I'm not sure exactly where they're going with that question. I'm a little confused on that.
Okay, I'll reiterate.
Okay.
The question surrounding transparency, and that the public deems that it needs to be very important. So how do you, as the police chief, facilitate and encourage the transparency and honesty within the department and your police officers.
Well, our
And I
police
believe
officers, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I believe you began to touch base when you were talking about leading by example, but I'll let you continue.
That, you know, the officers know, at least our officers here know, that, you know, if there is an issue, again, good or bad, we are not going to hesitate to speak to the public or talk to the media based on what is going on. We do have policies and procedures. They are expected to follow those at all times. You know, sometimes we get accused here of maybe being a little bit tough on discipline, but we believe that it's very important. And I think that if you know, if the person that asked the question or most people in the public, if they interviewed some of the guys here, they would know that it's very clear that we are not going to tolerate bad behavior here at the police department. And, you know, 99% of the officers that come through, they're all across the country. Great officers do great things. But, you know, none of us support bad officers. And, you know, unfortunately, all of us here on the panel have had to deal with officers that we've had to let go because they just don't hold up to the standards that we expect.
Thanks, Chief. Chief Williams?
You know, I believe when it comes to transparency, it starts from the top on down, and each one of us, from myself to my command staff, has to set the example, not only through our actions, but through our policies that we enact. And just speaking about some of the actions we had done, and it includes the equipment as well. Again, I think a big game changer for us was body-worn cameras. And it actually gives us the transparency that not only we see the officer's actions, but review those actions to see if there's any bad behavior. What's that?
You're doing fine, Chief.
Okay, I just heard someone in the background, that's all. But you know, having said that, there's a part of that question that has to do with the officer's honesty, and that's huge in today's world when it comes to an officer having his integrity, because there's a couple of court cases, Giglio and the Brady versus Maryland court decision that dealt with the officer's honesty. And if their integrity or honesty are ever in question, it becomes a matter in which the defense attorneys can now question that officer's credibility in any court case. So when we see credibility issues with an officer, it could lead to the possible termination of that officer because he loses his value to the agency, being able to go to major calls and having to potentially testify later on in court. But that being said, when it comes to the discipline process, I think what the public has to realize is that none of us can outwardly fire an officer just based on their conduct. The most we can do through a collective bargaining agreement is suspend that officer for 30 days and then seek termination through a state arbitration system, a binding arbitration system that both the union and the city have to pick a mutual arbitrator to hear the merits of the case, and then and only then they'll render a decision. So that's my answer to that question.
Thank you, Chief. Sheriff?
Yes, sir. Again, we too, like I said previously, not to repeat myself, but body cameras I think is huge. Also, the open line of communication we have with the media, and it's important, sure, when something good happens, or if there's a major arrest, we put those press releases out. But just as important, we also have to put releases out when something not so good happens. And again, I think it's important to get information out to the community, because the moment that you know, if the community learns about something that we haven't shared with them, that
Up to 30 questions.
It I think is important.
Yes, got like 20.
They don't believe that we're being honest with them. One of the examples I could think of right offhand is, unfortunately, here, the past 10 years, there's been a couple of suicides in the correctional facility. So, when those things happen, we immediately get that out to the public, because again, again, that's investigated not only internally by our people, but the New York State Commission of Corrections comes in and they do an independent investigation, which is made public. You can find all those on their websites also. But I think that that's one example I'm using where that's something that's not good. And certainly I'm not happy about those things, and we don't want those things to happen. But when they do happen, you've got to let the public know about it. And again, and same thing, if an officer is involved in something, bad in the community, and there's heavy discipline that comes down with it, the community has a right to know that. So again, it's all about transparency. And in our case, the easiest way for us to get information out there is through our media outlet. Here, when we send a press release, it's kind of neat. It not only goes to all the traditional places, but everything is linked together here. So a press release will not only go to all the traditional media, but it goes to all of our social media sites. It goes to our app. So anytime we send anything out, you'll get an alert on your phone. And like I said, I'd love to sit here and say that they're all good things, but unfortunately they're not. And I think that's important. We've got to deal with both the good and the bad. And that way you're building a positive, transparent relationship with the community. And that's where trust comes in. When they know that we're telling them something, I want them to know that it's the truth, and I want them to believe it.
Thank you, Sheriff. Chief Fowler, before you ask your question, I just want to remind the panelists that at about 7:52, 7:53, I will interrupt you as nicely as possible, so we'll have time for Doc Wood's presentation, his musical interlude. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, one of the terms that we are hearing in conjunction with transparency is de-escalation. Is in your agencies, do you require that de-escalation training is mandatory? And if so, how many hours?
Like me to start again?
Sure.
Yes, we do mandate the de-escalation training. We started that a couple of years ago. One of the big things now when it comes to the de-escalation is the reality-based training. It's something that has been around for a little while and is becoming more commonly used to where we have your officers actually role-playing different scenarios, which helps quite a bit. It's not just somebody putting something up on the board. They have real-life situations that they are taught and judged basically on their tactics and their ability to de-escalate a situation from something that might just be from talking somebody down right up to a shoot, don't shoot type of situation. So those are all covered. We do mandate those in our in-service training. I would probably have to let the chief or sheriff speak to what they teach in the academy. But we do that here as part of our in-service, and as the sheriff had touched on earlier with accreditation, those are standards that we do have to meet being an accredited agency as part of our 21 hours minimum in-service training that you have to do per year according to accreditation standards. So.
Okay, Chief Williams, you want to take it next?
Yes. As a matter of policy, we have de-escalation within our use of force policy. In addition to that, I believe that in the police academy, they get a total of 8 hours of de-escalation training to include role playing. And thereafter, as well as in-service training, there's also de-escalation training for 8 hours as well. What we have to keep in mind with de-escalation, I know it's a buzzword that's out with community members, is that de-escalation, it's not always possible in every situation based on the circumstances. Sometimes if you're dealing with a mentally ill person, sometimes the de-escalation skills and their ability to be able to communicate it with us it makes it very difficult. But, or the situation, maybe there's not enough time or space to be able to do de-escalation, but the officers are expected to use those techniques when confronted in dealing with the public, especially when they're in crisis. Having said that, I find the best people that have the best de-escalation abilities are those that have both life experience and police experience. And I think that's one of the things that we're all lacking, as police departments. We're seeing a number of police officers that they do 20 years and they leave. Or you see this new millennial generation and, most of them decided policing isn't for them. So you're constantly rehiring and seeing that lack of experience out there. And when you're hiring young men and women in their early to mid 20s, you think about it, they really haven't mastered the skills of life experience. And with police experience, that's how you get better with your communication skills with the public too. So we're asking a lot of these officers, but yes, it is taught and it is also in our policies. Thank you.
Thanks,
Sure.
Chief. I have to interrupt. The time's now 7:53.
Okay.
So before I turn this over to Doc Woods, let me once again wish all of our veterans a happy and blessed Veterans Day. We're grateful for your service, and we extend our wishes to family members of our veterans as well for their support, encouragement, and sacrifice. And now, without further ado, Doc Woods.
Yes, can everybody hear and see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for the last 7 weeks, I've been presenting music because music is a huge part of how the African-American community communicates. And music helps us, it soothes us, it comforts us, it encourages us in amazing ways. And I've been talking about my concept called the cry, because if you can listen to someone's music and you can hear the cry in the music, you'll hear the call for friendship and fellowship and love and peace and camaraderie and all those things. You'll hear it long before it escalates into anything that could be violent or dangerous. So what happens this particular week, we're going to hear a piece written by Walter Hawkins and sung by Kim Burrell called Be Grateful. And this song was sung in Black churches, almost every kind of Black church you can imagine all across the nation. And it's a cry of Black people to Black people. And so what happens is this, the song says to be grateful, because that's the way that people of color sometimes have to do our part. When something goes well, we have to say we're very grateful for that. We try to make people understand that because we're grateful doesn't mean we're weak or stupid or childish. It's a much, much higher relationship than that when you're grateful for something that does go well. And so we're going to play this song, and that should never be, the gratitude should never be taken for granted. One more thing, I have found in my 68 years that people of color, even after these horrid incidents, sometimes are the most forgiving people I've ever seen. And no one ever, the media never talks about the fact that after Dylan Roof went in and shot people at a Bible study, there was forgiveness. And I wish people would find the way to talk about that a great deal more. That's proof that the people of color are trying their best to participate in this society. Be grateful, Kim Burrell.
God has not promised me sunshine, that's not the way it's going to be, but a little rain mixed with God's sunshine, a little pain makes me appreciate the good times. gotta learn to be grateful. If you're grateful today, why don't you say, thank you, Lord, I'm grateful for everything you've done, everything you're gonna do. Ooh, be grateful, listen, be grateful. Be grateful. Because there's someone else who's worse off than you. Oh, be grateful. Be grateful. Someone else in this world would love to be in your shoes. Be grateful. If you don't believe me, go out to the hospital and take a look around. You got use of your limbs, you ought to be grateful. Because he's given you another day to live in his glory. Be grateful. Because God is good and he's good all the time. Because he's always coming through for me and you. Tell somebody, be grateful. Tell them, be grateful. Every day you tell them, be grateful because it's good. Tell them again, be grateful. Yeah. You may not have everything that you want, but you ought to be grateful. For the clothes on your back, you ought to be grateful. For the shoes on your feet, be grateful. For life, health, and strength, be grateful. Tell your neighbor, be. Look at him, tell him, don't you dare complain. God's been too good. We love you, Bishop. Grateful, be. The Bishop Walter Hawkins will never forget. Be grateful. This is why he says, for it. You ought to clap your hands and say everything is all right.
There's one thing I want to say at the end of this piece that we need to be aware of. When people of color send out that forgiveness, no matter how many times and how deeply we've been wronged, it puts something into the atmosphere that at least presents an opportunity for healing in our nation. No one has any clue how bad it would be if that forgiveness wasn't there. So when we say be grateful, the people of color are incredibly grateful for the smallest things. And that helps things sometimes keep from getting any worse, which is almost never talked about in the media.
Thanks, Doc Woods. That was just beautiful. Thanks for the topic of being grateful. The Bible talks about in all things give thanks. And if you do that, in all things give thanks, by definition, you are grateful.
Yep.
So now we're on the Zoom platform. We've left WPNY. So the questions, we have a ton of questions coming in, and I'm grateful for the police chiefs that are responding in real time by typing answers. We're going to continue to pose questions, Chief Fowler and myself. Okay. This next question is for Sheriff Maciol. You spoke of the word trust, and we all know that trust, by definition, is a fragile thing. It's easy to break, it's easy to lose, and it's one of the hardest things to ever get back. So it's in that spirit that I posed this question to you, also because you referenced body cams and the budget involving them. Not that they're expensive, but the storage of them and the storage of the information is what strains the budget. So it's in that spirit that I asked this question. What would you say are the two primary non-budgetary related changes that policing could do more to gain the community trust? And what changes can be made with no or minimal funding?
Probably personal communications with people. I mean, obviously, a police officer, having worked the streets for most of my career up until I became the sheriff, one of my traits, and I did inherit this from my mom, luckily, is the trait of talking to people. And I love to talk. And I have found, and thank God, throughout my career, I've never been in a situation where I had to use deadly physical force. But most of the situations, not all, but most of them, I was able to talk my way through a lot of these situations. So I think if a police officer, and again, it doesn't cost us anything to be human to one another, to communicate with one another. So I think certainly that would be one thing. And also, again, we're talking about human characteristics here. I think another thing, and we try to instill this in our people, and I know it was mentioned earlier, but we want to be just as positive and open in our police when we're working when we're working as we are when we're not working. So again, leading by example through the community. So, being active in the community, doing positive things. I guess the one thing what I'm trying to say is nothing bothers me more than when, there's a police officer who, I've been on these calls where I've gone on a call and there is a problem with a person, and that person just happens to be an off-duty police officer causing a problem. So I think it's important for us to, be good communicators, and again, we have a responsibility to be good communicators. As an administrator, I have a responsibility to give my people the training and the tools, but the people receiving the training and getting those tools from us, they have a responsibility to carry that through and to be good police officers. This is not an easy job, as you know. I mean, you did it for just as long as I have. And it's not what it was when we started 30 years ago, as far as what we're putting on the plates of police officers. I mean, not only are they doing the traditional stuff, they're carrying AEDs. If someone has a heart attack, they're armed with Narcan. If someone overdoses, we're sending them on mental health calls because our government at both the state and federal level, they've cut funding for mental health programs. They've closed down mental health facilities. We become the mental health people. Nothing would make us more happy. And I'm sure every police officer on this panel, I know I can speak for the other chiefs. If our people never had to go on another mental health call again, we would be ecstatic over that. But that's not reality. We don't have someone at 3 a.m. that's going to go to the hostage situation with a mental health person, or a person who's going to be jumping off a building, or something like that. It's us that goes to that. And we are so open to that, and we're eager to see what is out there for us, so that we can change that one component. I think that's critical.
Thank you, Sheriff. Chief Beach, in that same spirit, I just would like you to talk about trust. And we all know that once trust is there, it affords a person a tremendous amount of freedom, but once it's broken, it can be impossible to recover. If you can speak to the same question that the sheriff spoke to. You have to unmute yourself.
I didn't realize that I could actually look at these questions here, and while he was answering, that's what I was looking at, and kind of in relation to that, one of the questions being asked is about the body cams that Sheriff Maciol had mentioned, and Chief Williams. We are not currently an agency that has body cameras, and really it's because of the cost, and it is something that through my advisory committee, that is something that we've been talking about lately. And just actually on yesterday, the day before, I think it was Monday, I had received the quotes looking at prices for body cams. Now, the issue is going to be in the city. That's a very large expense. Right now, what we do is we have 17 or 18 of our patrol vehicles are equipped with cameras inside the cars with microphones that record all of the audio outside of what you're seeing in the patrol car. There's a very large investment in that. And when it comes to the body cameras, that would be something that would have to go through a budget process or possibly grants. And in the past, we are not a city who is qualified for the grant funding that a lot of other agencies do qualify for, either based on our low low crime rates, and just not having a large enough population. So that is something that we are looking into. I think that that's something that the public is looking for, like you're mentioning with the trust. You know, the only thing other than that that I could say is, you know, I've always been somebody who has tried to be as open and honest with people as I could be. And if somebody comes and sits down with me to ask me a question, speak about something, you know, I'm willing to talk. And I really, I can just, by my own example, is the best I can give you.
Thanks, Chief. Chief Williams, in the same spirit.
Yes, sir. You brought up a good point. It's just what my father taught me when I was young. It takes years to build up a reputation and seconds to lose it. Having said that, you know, budgets are always a concern when we talk about police reform and enacting new police reforms and defunding the police and doing police reforms. They're in polar opposites to each other. But having said that, the things that we can do without cost, one is continue our community outreach programs, whether it's Coffee with a Cop, Shop with a Cop, whether it's our police athletic league that we just recently started up, and other initiatives. The other thing that really comes to mind is our fair treatment of people on the street. When we talk about procedural justice, it's very important how, you know, our officers, you know, show respect and treat people on the street, because one officer's engagement with one person can make for a negative outcome for the next police officer who has to come along and deal with that person the second time around if you had a bad outcome with that police officer. So giving people a voice, showing neutrality, you know, showing respect and trustworthiness is very important when it comes to procedural justice, and have those officers not only receive that training, but exhibit it to the public.
Thank you, Chief. All three of your responses are in direct alignment with the letter that you received from the governor. In the second paragraph, it says, maintaining public safety is imperative. It is one of the essential roles of government. In order to achieve that goal, there must be mutual trust and respect between the police and the communities they serve. The success and the safety of our society depends on restoring and strengthening the mutual trust. With crime growing in many cities, we must seize this moment of crisis and turn it into an opportunity for transformation. I thank all three of you for your responses. Chief Fowler? Did we lose Chief Fowler?
I'm sorry, I guess I was muted, right? Okay, gentlemen, do you hear the word change? Change is demanded by local politicians. Change is demanded by national politicians. Change is demanded from the local communities that you serve. Do you think that your officers think that change is needed and necessary within law enforcement in the United States to gain more support from the communities in which they serve? If so, what are 2 or 3 things you think that you could think of that your officers can do to bring about these changes and bring about trust within their communities? Chief Beach, Williams, and then the sheriff.
Okay, thanks, Chief Fowler. You know, when it comes to change, whether they believe that there needs to be change or not, that's a tough question, I think, for me to answer. And I think as officers spend more time on the job, I think they're more open to change and understanding that change is necessary. You know, it's just a natural part of policing. You know, all of us have been in the business for quite a while, and things are not the same today that they were 25 years ago. As we see things that need to be fixed, we need to be willing to change and work on those. And we need to admit that, you know, at times we do things wrong. And there are things that we could do better. You know, just looking at different training type of things and being able to speak to the officers of the days when, you know, everybody carried a baton or the PR-24s or, you know, different things where you were at impact weapons to today when we're looking at doing different types of defensive tactics to minimize, you know, injuries to prisoners and to ourselves. And sometimes they don't think about that. You know, you see the old TV shows. That's a lot of these guys, you know, were babies, you know, back then when we started, or some of them not even born. You know, but they see on TV where a problem happens, you see an officer come over and start hitting somebody with a baton. Well, you know, that wasn't just on TV. You know, that was real life policing. And I think that they are willing to understand that change. I think part of the frustration when it comes to the change in my lighting system, that's frustrating. But I think part of it is, you know, sometimes we hear, you know, there's problems and we need to change. And I've been, you know, I've had some of these conversations with some of our local leaders and say, okay, well, can you identify what you're talking about? You know, can you give me something a little bit more specific? Because it's tough to work sometimes with, we've got problems. And I think to be able to go back to our officers and pinpoint something and say, you know, it's easy when it comes to policy. And you say, we've got a problem with this policy because it's not working. We need to change this particular policy. But when we generalize something, it's very tough for them to comprehend, and it's tough for me to comprehend. What should we do? You know, I like that sitting down and talking to somebody and saying, hey, what is the problem? What specifically do we need to work on? Now let's develop a plan to fix it, and then let's implement that and hopefully move forward.
Good. Chief Williams.
Chief Fowler, as you know, being in law enforcement for many years, you know, any profession, people do not like change. Officers are no different sometimes, but, you know, our officers are starting to see, based on the unrest we're seeing in other cities regarding police reform, that they realize that it's good and it's needed. However, my concern with the changes that have been implemented here in New York State, it seems like in the past couple of years, it's been too much thrown on us at in one given time, to the point where we're putting a lot on these police officers. You know, just in the last year and a half, 2 years, we've seen raise the age, we've seen discovery changes, we see bail reform, we see police reform, just to name a few. And in my concern, it's too much change all at once. And, you know, any type of change needs to be methodically done and done correctly. And that's my concern with the change. I just think it's been too much all at once.
Sheriff.
Sure. Again, I don't think that people are, well, I guess they are afraid of change, but I think if the police officers were part of the process when change is going to be made, I think it would certainly transition a lot better. You know, police officers, you know, they want to be perceived in a positive manner by the community. But unfortunately, sometimes, whether it be the media or you know, some elected leaders at much higher levels who really don't have any grasp on what's happening out in the community or on the streets, or, you know, what a police officer is dealing with, or what the community is dealing with when they're interacting with the police. It's easy for these people who are, you know, hidden away, far away, and, you know, making these drastic changes without involving people as part of the process. And I think that's where segments in forums and processes like this here right now, where you're talking with you know, police executives. And again, our panel is going to be consisting of people in the community and police officers. You've got to make everyone that's going to be affected by a change part of the process when you're implementing the change. For someone on the complete outside, and, you know, we just use one example, you know, and again, a whole nother topic, but bail reform was put out there without any consultation from public defenders, from prosecutors, from law enforcement, from whether it be police chiefs or sheriffs. It just was put out there by people who are, you know, and I don't think I don't think it was thought out, and they just made a significant change without involving the people directly affected by the change in the process. And I mean everybody. I'm not just talking law enforcement, but in this case right now with police reform, we need to involve the stakeholders in our specific communities because they're all different. I mean, a community on the West Coast may have different issues with their police than here in Utica, New York, or in Rome, New York, or in the town of Ava, a rural community here in Oneida County. Each community has specific needs. So I think if you make the people who are going to be affected by the change part of the process to make that change, it's going to go a lot smoother, and I get it, with all due respect to the governor, he just is demanding a lot of things and they don't always fit every single community. So that's why at least this process, each governing body that has a police department, they're the ones who are going to approve and develop their plan and approve their plan because it fits their community. The Syracuse plan may not fit in Rome. The Rome plan is not going to fit in, in Binghamton or wherever. So I think it's important to get all of the stakeholders involved in the process. Then change is accepted so much easier.
Okay.
Okay, in the governor's letter, in the third paragraph, it says, to that end, on June 12th, 2020, I, the governor, signed an executive order requiring each local government in the state to adopt a policing reform plan by April 1st of 2021. And we all know or can anticipate some type of mandate coming after the governor's office reviews the plans that are submitted. So it's in that spirit I asked this question. If a state or federal mandate came out stating that any new police hire after January 1st of 2022 would need to have 60 college credits, how would you make that work?
I could take that one first. Certainly,
Sure.
I think every police chief, and I know Musco, in your career, you did a lot of recruitment with the state police. Recruitment is not easy. It's challenging to get people to come into this career. So certainly, I think education is very important. Very much, support all of our people, advancing their education, whether it's before we hire them or during their career with us. We've had many people who have worked and gotten their various degrees while they're working. That's all that is tremendous, but that's not everybody. And I think, because obviously you've got to have, you've got to be able to get through a background check. You've got to have a clean background. You've got to get through a polygraph. You've got to get through a psychological, and those are very challenging because and again, I go back to what I said in the beginning here, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And I think I do unfortunately see a lot of times that some people get boxed out of coming into this career because they may have made a foolish mistake in college. But to me, I may see something deep inside that person that might make them a good police officer someday. And it's unfortunate that sometimes we can't always hire them. And some of our best officers are people who have made mistakes in the past and who have learned from them and who have corrected themselves. So while I see college as a plus, that would be tremendous. I just don't know we're going to significantly deplete the small pool that we have to work with now. Again, with and I'll use the national media, with a lot of negativity towards police, with all these requirements towards police. Now we're 60 college credits. If that were to come out of this in the end, I fear that with so many requirements, we're going to have little to no people to choose from. And on top of that, we also want a diverse workforce. So, I just think it's going to really present a lot of challenges to us, even more so than we have now when it comes to fulfilling our recruitment. Because again, all of us struggle to fill vacancies. And now when COVID sets in and we hear all the budget cuts that may be coming down the road, what does that do to, salary increases? What does that do to benefits? The retirement system is not what it was 30 years ago when we walked into this career. There's a lot of things that don't make this job as attractive as it once was. So again, putting more requirements may in the end, even though you're going to get a more quality person, in the end, it may really, hinder our recruitment efforts even more.
Thanks, Sheriff. Chief Williams?
No, just echoing a lot of the statements that Sheriff Maciol said, I do believe that such a mandate or requirement could handicap our ability to hire police officers as it is already. We're starting to see a stark decline in the amount of people that are interested in becoming police officers and signing up to take our test. Now, we went from 4 years ago having a pool of 500 candidates down to 170 for the last test we just gave in September. So if you added such a mandate, especially when we're hiring in large numbers, it could significantly impact our ability to be able to hire people. But when I look at our civil service list, and believe me, we scan carefully for minorities, people of color that we could possibly hire. What I see with a lot of the candidates, especially Afro-Americans, some can't afford to go to college. And, and it doesn't necessarily make them, not a good candidate for the job. I mean, I'll tell you this much, sometimes having life experience and maturity, I'll take that over a college graduate sometimes who doesn't have those qualities. And, but I do believe college is a plus. And one of the things that we offer when we do hire police officers, we have a college reimbursement tuition program where an officer can continue to get his education once he's hired by the police department. And the city reimburse him for tuition fees, tuition, and books. So that's something they can continue to build on once they get hired by the police department. But I am concerned that such a requirement would handicap our hiring.
That tuition reimbursement is a very good thing. Thanks, Chief.
Yep, thank you.
I guess I'll finish up here. Chief Williams was trying to use that as, for him to go out for recruitment there with the reimbursement program. Just so everybody knows, Rome has that program also. So I want him to go after the best candidates. But, putting that mandate, honestly, would be absolutely devastating to us and our ability to recruit. We're down 30 to 40% on our recruitment now. And that's going out and actually making concerted efforts to recruit. That's trying to get people to come in. Years ago when, you just had the announcement out there, we would have 200 people sign up for the exam. This year and last year, we had 83 and 84 respectively. We have openings that we couldn't fill last year. We're short people on the road. Now we didn't have enough people to fill our vacancies in the academy that is currently going. And we are short more people today than we have ever been in the 25 years that I've been here. So to add just another obstacle, again, like the sheriff said, we already do, the very tough background, very in-depth background and psychological and the polygraph testing. And so, the candidates are getting weeded out. Out of those 84 people that I had last year, we interviewed 9 by the time you actually got the interview process. So by just adding another mandate to them, I think it's going to be devastating to the police force.
If I could just say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
The one thing that we didn't mention, and I know as soon as I say it, they're gonna agree. The one thing, the other requirement that's put on police recruits is physical fitness, the physical agility test. On average, in today's generation, sadly, we lose on average 2/3 of our candidates to not passing the physical fitness requirements set forth by the state of New York. So again, if you have 90 candidates that pass the test, you're going to lose 60 of them because they can't do the sit-ups, push-ups, and the 1.5 mile run. And I've been to those testings, and I'm an old man, and I can do that. And it's pretty sad that some 20-year-olds, because again, that some in that generation, they can't do those requirements. And then lastly, here specifically in Oneida County, and I'm sure it's like this in other parts of the state, the pool of candidates that I'm looking at, and Chief Beach is looking at, and Chief Williams is looking at, it's the same people. So then we find ourselves competing against the same people, and it's whichever one of us gets to that candidate first. So yeah, there might be 60 people to choose from, but you've got 3 agencies looking at those same 60 people, which again poses that much more of a challenge. So it's just, it's a struggle, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse as each year goes by.
Thanks, Sheriff. Thanks for drawing reference to the physical fitness standards, because you made reference to the backgrounds, the polygraphs, the psychological exams. But when a person gets to what we used to call candidate processing, that day, the only thing they are in direct control over is their sit-ups, push-ups, and mile-and-a-half. Your background is what it is.
Yep.
There's nothing you can do about it at that moment. So I think that's where we have to rewind the tape when it comes to recruiting, and look at it as it's not advertising that, hey, we're looking to hire. You got to get in those schools earlier. You got to talk to the students when they're in middle school, even elementary school. You
Exactly.
know, if someone is 26 years old and has never considered being a law enforcement official, the likelihood of him or her changing their mind by visiting a recruitment table is minimal. It's minimal. Plus, he or she has probably made choices that disqualifies them anyway from the hiring process. I'm sorry, when you guys started talking about recruitment, it made me remind the tape to my prior journey. So, Chief Fowler, it's 8:28. We have time for one more question.
Sure. Gentlemen, in some communities, they have citizens review boards to review police misconduct or complaints of police misconduct. Number one, do you have such a board in the communities in which you serve? And if so, do you find them helpful? Sheriff, Chief Beach, and then Chief Williams.
Sure. Here at the Sheriff's Office, we do not have a civilian review board. When a complaint, a personnel complaint does get filed, obviously that's part of the accreditation, one of the accreditation standards. We have a specific process that we have to follow. And in the end, the investigation is handled by our criminal investigation unit, which is our professional standards unit. We have a couple of specific investigators that work just those types of investigations. And then obviously, if there is wrongdoing, there are consequences. And again, we talked earlier about being fair and across the board. We don't have a citizen review board. I don't know enough about them to speak on them. Me specifically, not that it's a civilian review board, but the unique thing about the sheriff, if we talk about a sheriff, I'm chosen by the people of the community, and I'm in an elected position. Not that that's something that happens regularly, but it does happen every 4 years. So I think that holds me to a very high level of accountability, because if I'm not doing my job, which in essence is leading the agency and ensuring our people are doing the right things, if I'm not doing a good enough job for the people, then they won't put me back in this position. So I think that's kind of unique for me, because again, I have to make sure that I'm always working in the community the way the community wants me to, because if not, they won't let me keep my job.
Okay, thank you.
Chief Fowler, we do not have a citizen review board. We also follow the accreditation standards that the sheriff was speaking of. All of our discipline and investigations, internal investigations, are handled through our Office of Professional Standards. And we have a review board that Office of Professional Standards is between 5 and 7 of our promoted officers, administrative officers that sit on that board and do the investigations and do the recommendations for any type of discipline or findings of wrongdoing. We do report what we find to the public, just is in a general manner of, these are the amount of complaints, what the type of complaint is, what the findings are. And that is something that I will be delving a little bit further into with my advisory committee as we move forward with this reform.
Okay. Chief Williams?
Here in Utica, we do not have a civilian review board, but I paid close attention to the cities that do have it in New York State. And what I see is, instead of bringing the community together, sometimes I see it creates more issues or problems within the community itself. And I'm not against, our community be involved in policing. I'm thinking more along the lines that I'd be open up to a community advisory committee rather than a review board, because Chief, as you know, reviewing discipline, you got to have some experience, you got to have some training, especially when it comes to use of force. And those decisions, about whether use of force is authorized or not comes down to case law. It's the same case law that we go over and we constantly review all the time. And the way I look at it, when it comes to police discipline, the buck stops with me. If I'm not doing my job and properly disciplining my officers based on police misconduct, then I need to go.
Well, gentlemen and everyone in attendance, I thank everybody for their efforts. For those that don't know, the panelists were actively answering questions that were coming in. Obviously, we don't have time for every question, but I hope and pray that we pick the ones that really drove home what we're trying to and what the public needs to know. We embrace trust, and I'm grateful for Doc Woods stressing that, grateful. So I'd like to thank first Chief Fowler for helping with this, and the three chiefs, including the sheriff, Chief Beach, Chief Williams, and Sheriff Maciol, for your time. And I hope and pray for every member of our respective communities that we all grow together. And as Doc Woods said, forgiveness is a tough thing, but it's probably one of the best things you can do. So on that note, I'd like to sign off and wish everyone a blessed evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Thank you.